And we have had a very, very exciting day. I think we have been presented for a basket of new ideas and new research and problems and issues to go ahead with. And I think I'm looking forward to this session where we will try to put things together and to come up with thoughts on what to do next. And we have here in the panel, Mimi Scheller, who is professor at Drexel University in the US. You are sitting here at my bottom screen. And Cristina Marolda, who is an independent expert and a long-term expert, civil officer in the European Union, and also a promoter, I think, of the issues we are dealing with today. And then we have Andree Woodcock, who you have met throughout the day and who is professor at Coventry University and who have been moderating throughout. And here we have them all, and you can check their biographies in the conference or in the event files. You can see that they are all very experienced and very prominent in their various fields. I think that before we start, I would like just to present a few lines and also to ask a few questions, and I'm sure you will come up with exciting answers. We can say that the TInnGO project, which is the host of this event, is both looking back and looking forward. And we have heard a lot of optimistic and also very promising research and results. But on the other hand, I will take the liberty also of being a bit pessimistic, because I think there's also a lot of knowledge around which is never translated into addressing really the power core of transport and mobility. And the question is, of course, how do we, with all these exciting results and perspectives and ideas, how do we create a game change and how do we make lasting impacts? Now, it's big questions, and yeah. I started this morning with a few challenges, a few provocative issues here, because I think that the current situation where we have a lot of talk about smart mobility, and now we, in this context, talk about gender smart mobility, we are also here producing a lot of problems and paradoxes. And I think that the smart mobility discourses produces insiders and outsiders. And here you see a bunch of insiders here from the Danish public media, men, they are acting as experts, as politicians, as audiences, and as users when the talk comes to autonomous cars and electric cars and smart climate issues. And outside we have all the women in front of the parliament crying acting, formulating their critical questions, but getting not a lot of attention and getting no access to the insiders. And this is not only my opinion, it has been voiced also by some of these younger activists. That's one thing. And another thing is that these power structures, they also translate into policies. We all know that, we have heard about it today. And I would like to direct your attention to the recent versions of the Horizon Europe, the upcoming huge research and innovation program, which is also decisive for whether we can go on with what we are doing here. That there is an overwhelming focus on technology, on innovation, and on autonomous cars, nearly no attention focused on non-motorized mobilities and sustainability and so on. And you can see here, this is a screening of the keywords. And when it comes to gender, it's even worse. How? It's even, I don't know what happens here, because I think I put the wrong picture in, but we have made a count of gender and diversity in these 200 calls, and only in 11 of them mention gender, and 28 of them mention diversity in a row of, age, disability, gender, etc. But none of them have gender or diversity or social issues in the front, in the headline. So this is the situation. And I think there is a need for bridging the technological focus and power structures with the more social ones that we are dealing with. And I mean, this also comes into the talk about gender smart mobilities. So what we have asked you to ponder upon here is concepts, and I think in particular Mimi Scheller has been the one who is, I have addressed the conceptual stuff to you. I mean, this idea of gender smart transport, is it feasible, and what kind of problems and potentials do you see in it? And also, and this goes for Cristina, I think, more or less, about policies and strategies. Gender smart transport, and mobility, how can we translate these concepts into politics and research strategies? And what are the most pressing issues, conceptual and political? I guess that Andrea can ponder upon everything here at the end. And also, is it, and this is on my own account now, is it time to suggest for the European Union a high-level expert committee on gender smart transport, which can work closer to the European Union? Because I feel that we are working in bubbles, which are not very closely connected. And I really think there is a need for a channel for a closer, more proximity between the various communities. And having said that, I would like to start the session here. And I think if it's okay with you, we will start with you, Mimi, and then Cristina, and then at the end, Andrea. Yeah, okay. Please, Mimi Scheller.
Okay, thank you.
Hilda, can you stop sharing your screen, please?
I can.
There we go. And
so is it okay now?
Yes.
Yeah,
okay. So.
Thank you. Can people see me? Yeah. Okay, I don't see my own screen, but that's okay. So thank you. It's wonderful to join you all, and congratulations on this incredible project. It's been exciting to hear about it, and I've read some of the background, and then I managed to hear a little bit of the last panel. I joined around 8 a.m. And I have to say, I was just, I had to drive my daughter to school because our school buses are not running full capacity because of COVID. And we do not have a good alternative system for walking or biking to school. And it involves a busy road that has no sidewalk, no bike path. And it's, mothers who are left to sort of pick up the pieces and deal with getting their children to school. Children who are also stubborn about walking because other children are not walking, so they don't want to walk. And we don't have walking school buses. So that's a whole another story there. But I wanted to talk about the project in relation to this unprecedented mobility disruption that we find ourselves in, because I think it brings to light really important factors that your studies and your research are important for understanding. So the disruption is not in the sense used by tech companies to describe disruptive platform economies, but in the sense of this global pandemic that has massively disrupted everyday mobility practices. And all of our mobilities have been brought to a kind of abrupt halt, and then also drastically reorganized to keep things going. Millions of people have been thrown out of work, especially women and especially minorities. And suddenly we're all made aware of the fundamental premise on which societies are built. constant but unequal movement. So I think associated with the disruptions we're experiencing, the questions raised by the TInnGO research project on gender smart mobility have several dimensions that I want to pick up on. First, as normal social practices are disrupted during the pandemic, new material assemblages and temporal patterns have emerged. Under the exigencies to demobilize our lives, people were forced to adopt new routines, new habits, and new ways of stilling ourselves, stilling our economies, and stilling our social interactions. And these changes have a really clear gender dimension, which is built upon existing gender differentials in both mobilities, accessibility, and digital connectivity. As each affected region has imposed social distancing measures and lockdowns, those who are privileged enough to have safe homes and secure jobs find themselves confined to their homes, in which they must reassemble the means of work, of health, and of reproduction of the household. For more privileged groups, in which I include many white women, to be frank, and many European women who are in the workforce, this has meant a juggling of remote paid work and homework, such as childcare, shopping, cooking, caring for elders, leading to a complex juggling of what we call productive and reproductive labor. And this adjustment has been partially assisted by various smart mobilities, which have really come to the fore with the use of delivery services and digital services to replace one's need to move around. So we're able to work online, use apps to order food, and benefit also from the policies of open streets, right, to ride our bikes, including things like public bike shares in greater numbers. And also people are using, I think, smart technology to sort of demand improved inclusive mobility options. Secondly, for some policymakers, the dramatic emptying of city streets prefigures a world in which we have challenged the dominant system of automobility and fossil fuel dependence by opening up space for walking, biking, and better transit. And so from an American perspective, we have especially been watching, European mayors like Anne Hidalgo in Paris taking advantage of this moment to roll out more inclusive streets and place limits on automobility, limits on cars. And, in the North American context, that's also happening a little bit, but not to that extent. But it is being claimed that certain cities are using this crisis to center residents, equity, safety, and access, and that those who do so will be more successful in coming out of the pandemic than other cities. Groups like Transportation Alternatives are arguing that cities around the world must look past the personal automobile, I'm quoting here, and reimagine their streets as a pathway for recovery built around walking, biking, and public transit. And others are looking at how cities can incorporate things like electric micro-mobility to create more sustainable, equitable, and resilient transportation networks. So these transformative scenarios can be seen as part of an entire package of smart mobility transition in which gender representations and gender mainstreaming could become crucial policy levers, right? Like now that we've assembled the research, or you have, and you have the sort of ideas and the plans, is this the moment to really sort of push them forward? And it's here that I really see great potential in the TInnGO methodology to help us identify what is working, what the barriers are, and to consider how to make desirable changes in the sort of post-pandemic transportation trends. Third, though, for many other less privileged people, especially women from minority ethnic backgrounds who may be essential workers in various health, food, and service industries, the disruption to life, the economic consequences, and the health risks that have had to be taken are far more severe, and it's led to much higher risk of exposure to the coronavirus. And I realize that your topic, is not about the current situation. It was done before this, but the gender dimensions of mobility and COVID-19 are, of course, as you argue, intersectional, right, and complex, as your project notes. So research is showing now that women's productive roles may have been intensified by the pandemic and become more complex and difficult, especially given problems for those who have to travel to work. Reproductive labor has also increased because the provision of familial or educational care for children in a public way has been withdrawn and has now moved into the home. And in other contexts, there are increased demands for productive and reproductive labor, which has forced women to make frequent journeys between workplace and school, or elders, or shops, and to form other kind of community support work. We've also seen a rise in domestic violence, one of the predicted outcomes of the lockdowns. So how can gender smart mobilities help address these intersectional challenges of uneven mobilities? I think the TInnGO project has proposed that we focus on making transportation more inclusive, affordable, effective, attractive, and sustainable. And it offers important methodologies to analyze and measure these factors while taking gender and other intersectional factors into account. I enjoyed hearing in the last panel, Lena Oswald's paper, which talked about these intersectional analysis and the inclusion of women, as well as people with disabilities, people who speak different languages, those with non-technical knowledge, et cetera, into decision-making and planning in what you have all shown is an overwhelmingly male-dominated transport planning and tech sector. So such inclusion is also about shifting representations and imagery, imaginaries. As I wrote about in my article with Julia Hildebrand on the imagery used in promotional materials for automated cars, such design projects and promotional projects are not only deeply gendered, but they're highly racialized. And they're designed to allay the fears of white men about not being in control of the car, right? So if I just want to sort of move towards a conclusion by just saying, if I were to make one friendly intervention, it's simply the thought that mainstreaming gender, which I know is the term used in European policy circles, may appear too mainstream an approach within the current crisis, because it effectively preserves the mainstream and its existing norms. It kind of adds in, gender to the mainstream by mainstreaming it. And I just wanted to add a little comparative context from the US, that the pandemic crisis has led to this huge mobilization of the Black Lives Matter movement. And in many cases, it's led by Black women and queer women and people of color who have offered a more radical critique of mobility injustices. For Black, Brown, and Indigenous practitioners of transport planning and urban planning, this has galvanized a really radical critique of current practices of kind of white male supremacy, which we could argue also uphold gender inequity, including the fact of, that white women's experiences and women of color and Black women, they're different, but they're all inflected by this kind of white male supremacy's basis in gender inequalities. And they point to the flip side of smart mobility, which is what Charles T. Brown calls arrested mobility. That is the constant stopping of Black, Latinx, and immigrant mobilities, and the failure of provision of infrastructure in these minority communities, or the building of infrastructure that actually harms them. So there's a whole range of Black transport planners in the US, like Tamika Butler, Destiny Thomas, and Naomi Derner, who have been calling for planning agencies and city transport agencies and planners to make space for others, including women and people of color, to redistribute resources, to acknowledge past and present harm, and to make what they call infrastructural reparations. And what you might find surprising is they also ask Americans to stop turning to European models and what they call Eurocentric frameworks. They want us to think more globally. So I think that's something really challenging for European transport researchers and planners to think about. Like beyond gender mainstreaming, what would a more radical intersectional process of infrastructural reparations look like? And how would gender smart mobility fit into that? What can we learn from women of color in North America, Latin America, or African cities about how power can be shifted away from those with privilege, which means they have to give up some space and some power? And what are some of the creative interventions already being made in smart mobilities outside Europe? So I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think we'll just proceed and then have a final discussion. And I'm sure that people will remember your both critical and constructive and creative considerations here. So Cristina, I hope you are ready.
I am. And what is this? What shall I do? There is the speaker's view here. Here I am.
Yeah, we see you and you don't have PowerPoints, right?
No. I don't have PowerPoint. I just wanted to congratulate Mimi for this excellent presentation that is anticipating something else. So I wanted to say, but I have to stay on a different line as I was asked for to contribute to this discussion. So first of all, I think that I would like to make a couple of statements. First of all, smart. Hilda used to say that smart is not motorized. I would say smart is not technological. Smart is not digital. And very often, smart transport, smart mobility implies the concept of digital, which is not. Smart is smart. Smart is efficient, smart is sustainable, smart is affordable and accessible. So I think these are the characteristics. So this being said, I think that then, I mean, talking about COVID, but I will come back later on that. So what is next? I think that we have, and as a previous project officer in the European Commission, I noticed that on my skin, that very often even wonderful projects tend to remain in a drawer, tend to remain a wonderful academic exercise with a perfect publication, with a very good dissemination as well, but they really fail to become implementable results. So I think that that is really the core, because I think that TInnGO has a lot to share in order to become implementable. So I think that first of all, you have this wonderful network across more or less 10 countries, if I'm not wrong. So I think that you have to create a long-lasting relations in this network, including the authorities or the stakeholders that you have involved in your surveys and so on, at a national level and for the moment at a project level. And of course that is not enough, because I think you should try to become at least European. I would like, I mean, to be a little bit more, even if Mimi says that you're not looking any longer to the European model, but I think that there are things that can be put in common and, I mean, progress on something that is there. So I think that you have to involve the European Commission under two aspects. I mean, the aspects of research and projects and the aspect of policymaking. These are two lines that should go in parallel together. So from the point of view of projects, I think that it would be very interesting to create, and you can have the support of TRIMIS for that, to create a cluster, but a cluster is too much. When I worked on logistics, I created clouds of projects, because a cluster is a sort of formalized link where a cloud is a cloud, is floating and can change shape and dimension. So a cloud of projects that are dealing with gender. starting from transport, from the transport program, and possibly having connection with others, because we are also talking about methodologies. So methodologies can apply to transport, to energy, to environment, to food, to health, whatever. So there could be a sort of cross-fertilization of fundings and results. I mean, TInnGO is already doing that. I mean, you have already a couple of, linked projects with yours. I would add also Dignity. That is a project that is going to start. I mean, it was supposed to start in April, and of course it has been postponed to October because of the lockdown. But I think it is important. I will be in charge of drafting a final report on gender issues, in particular with automation and rural areas. And I want to have results also from TInnGO and Diamond and other projects, because I mean, no project is an island. I mean, to port somebody bigger than me. So I think it is important to make that. So that is the first thing at the level of project. At the level of project, it is important to spread the information at a higher level. And I think you should send your reports very synthetic. I mean, no more than 3 pages, to the relevant commissioners. And I think they are the Commissioner for Transport, the Commissioner for Research, and the Commissioner for Eurostat, the European Statistical Office. I mean, transport, it is obvious. And I mean, the Commissioner Valian is also making, is building up on the platform for challenge, for change that Commissioner Bulc already started. Commissioner Gabriel is surely very interested in gender for the research side. And the Eurostat, funny enough, the Commissioner is the Commissioner for Economy. And this is the Gentiloni. And I think it is extremely important to make him understand that good data on gender and transport and diversity in transport, as I mean, I follow Mimi, that is not only gender. Gender is a real broad concept, but I mean, as I used to say, the world is not binary between men and women. There is a lot of differences. And taking into account these differences is fundamental for the economy. I mean, Laurie said something this morning saying that the sustainable economy of women is fundamental to relaunch the economy in the world. So, and then talking about Eurostat, Eurostat is also making, on the demand of some DGs, of some Directorate Generals of the Commission, the so-called Eurobarometer, that are specific surveys and analysis of data. So I think that you should ask 2 things to Eurostat with the support of the commissioners, so that you have to convince about that. First of all, to have intersectional data for transport and for other things. And then also to create a Eurobarometer, an analysis. They do that on very specific questions. So it cannot be gender and transport. They will say, we don't know that. But I mean, I refer to what Michaela and Jonas said, that they had the difficulties in tackling and handling a huge amount of data, and not at European level. Eurostat can do that. Create the perfect question for Eurostat to create a Eurobarometer. And that could be what is the long-lasting effect of COVID? I'm inventing now with all the gaps that you have. I see that you're looking to the things, but I have another couple of things. Okay. So, but I mean, research is not enough. You have to translate that into policy. So, and I think that in this respect, if I may say, your request to the Commission to include gender in Horizon Europe in the next framework program, I read it, and I think it is a little bit too general to have a strong impact on them. you have to be much more convincing, and you have to really make them understand that the gender is not just a patch or a label to put it. It's a mindset that you have to embed in everything you do. In this respect, I do not think it is important to have gender in the headlines of the calls. That must be a mindset. It should be implicit that wherever you have to have a diversity impact assessment of what you do, an impact assessment of your research results. So I think that in this case, I mean, what you said, Hilda, that to create a commission or a group, a team of mentors or trainers to create a new mentality, a new approach is very, very, very important. Another little point I would say is that when we have statistics on women employment in transport, unfortunately, we are not really clear of what we are looking for. We are looking at the normal ISO classification of jobs, and that is very engineering. And that's why we have a very, I think, in my view, I would like to have a proof of that. I think that we have biased statistics. We have to redefine, and Sarah said that, and Austria is launching that, thank you, because I think it is paramount to redefine the jobs in transport and the needed skills for the new professions. And in that case, I mean, we will change the statistics. I do not know if that will be in favor or not of women, but it will change for sure the percentage of women participation. I would have a lot of other things to say, but I think it's enough.
Thank you so much, Cristina. We know that you have many ideas, and we also have the pleasure of having you on the external expert board of the TInnGO project, for all your well-reflected ideas. And then I will give the word now to Andrea, and then I hope we'll have some time, 5 minutes for discussion at the end. Andrea, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm afraid I'm going to have to do a short PowerPoint presentation. My head is all over the place, and everyone knows I have a memory like a sieve, so I'm sorry about this.
And you uploaded yourself, right?
Yes, I'm doing it now, Hilda.
Yeah, wonderful.
Oh, that's good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's there now.
Yeah, it needs to be in slideshow mode. So,
That's fine.
Yeah, it's okay. You're all right along the top where all the menus are. That's fine. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. And thank you for a fascinating stakeholder forum. I was asked by Hilda to consider 3 paradigm shifts. So this is what I've done. Where do I think we could go forward with the work? I think the first bit is about the research footprint based around the work of TRINIS and others, looking at the size of the research footprints and the disparity between them. And with this, I'd like to take a very much holistic approach across the whole of the educational sector. So we know there's a load of biases. We have the Matilda complex, we have the maternity penalty, we have the women taking on a greater amount of service duties than men. We have everyday sexism. We have reductions in zone of influence. So women don't rise to the top, or they don't have the networks. And although they build up networks, they don't build up networks with key influencers. At all levels, we have a lack of gender and diversity in staff, and this is absolutely appalling. There's a lot of work been going on about the student population, but when you look at how many women and how many staff from ethnic minorities are actually employed at the universities, it is very, very low, especially at senior level. It is improving, but it's not improving fast enough. So what's the message that we're sending out to students here? We're not, they might be a diverse group of students, but the lecturers are not. The lecturers are still from a very privileged background. All these things mean that women aren't rising to the top. They're not heads of department, they're not leaders of research teams. If they don't do this, they don't influence the agendas and set the research agendas. And this is a key problem for us. And this must be tackled. They might not be on executive boards, they might not be on review panels, they might not be setting the agenda for research going forward. Their voices aren't heard, and this has to be tackled at a number of levels across the higher education institutions. So my second area, very much in a similar vein, will be looking at diversity workforce management across the whole of the transport business ecosystem. When I was doing my deliverable, I strayed into a lot of different territories that I shouldn't have been nosing around in. But there is so many similarities when you look at the lack of diversity, the lack of gender across everywhere within this industry. So the same with the higher education. It's just part of the same problem. And there is work on looking at workplace diversity where the industries start to serve the communities in which they're embedded. We're not seeing that within transport. We're not seeing a level of diversity in the workforce that's embedded there. So you don't just look at gender and diversity as an issue outside your organisation. You live it, you breathe it, you understand it. You understand cultural differences, the strengths and weaknesses of other people, and bring them together in creative teams and create a win-win scenario. And I think that is what needs to be changed. And there are ways in which we can do this. The cybersecurity system's done it. They understand, and maybe the banking sector's done it, because they understand that they need, for their product to get out there, they actually need to understand what people are really like. So let's try and look at things like that across the whole of the sector. The other issue is, with my design hat on, I'm not a designer, I'm a design researcher, is looking at empathic systemic design research. Let's start looking at the problem more holistically. Let's start using system design or system approaches to look at the problem and start working with language and concepts that they already work with. So everything's a system. If you do short micro interventions without taking a holistic systems point of view, your solution will be upset and undermined by it. So look at this, have a systems orientation view on this. Borrowing from this, looking at how we can, what was it, what is it, what can it be? And there are patterns here in terms of research and innovation that you can see are being replicated. You've got systems that fail because of the same patterns recurring again and again, and start trying to look at transport as part of this. So I did do something like this in terms of looking at gender transport poverty in Pakistan, where we started mapping out what were the problems, why were they failing, were they working against each other, and plotting out why transport systems are failing at the moment. The last thing is repositioning vehicle design and engineering into the wider system. So vehicles and mobility aligned to people's lives as an enabler. And here's my last slide here, which is the approach Coventry's taking. We're using personas, very detailed personas, maybe looking at inclusion issues, we're looking at disability, we're looking at gender violence, and where does transport fit in to people's lives? It's not just, oh, you develop a vehicle for the sake of it, but where does this fit into this bigger picture? And that's what we're trying to do with the development of personas in this. And that's one of the areas where we'll be pursuing with our design teams in the next year within TInnGO, and hopefully you'll be seeing some of these things coming forward. So we now have the ability to create vehicles or mobility that actually meet needs rather than just, oh, get people to somewhere as fast as they possibly can. Well, we can have specialised vehicles. We can start doing things and actually designing vehicles that serve the needs of local people and communities. So achieving the paradigm shift, recommendations for HEIs to increase the impact of women in research. looking at tools, methods and training material to support increase of gender and diversity across the transport business ecosystem. And here I agree with Mimi. Gender and diversity are so interlinked now. It's just part of it. And that this work's occurring across the Black Lives Matter movement. And that's opening up a whole lot of different issues that we need to consider. It's not just women and men, it's looking at this wider diversity and what's happening with this. And then looking at demonstrating the value added of design thinking in future projects. And the EU doesn't actually have a lot of design within projects. They have a lot of technology, they have a lot of engineering. But what will design give you that you don't already have? And we're thinking it's a catalyst to deeper thinking about mobility. It's also a more creative way of engaging people and mapping out the system architects, which could lead to future research. So those are my three issues that I think we could follow through within TInnGO. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Thanks to all of you. We still have a lot of participants on board, and I see that there have been lively interactions also in the chatting, and references have been exchanged already. But we have time now for a few questions, and I hope that some of you will come up with questions, or that panelists would like to, perhaps you would like to comment on each other's ideas and presentations. How is it here? Do I read the questions? How is it?
Yes, Hilda, you can read the questions, or you can answer the questions, direct the questions. You're in control here.
Oh, I'm in control. Oh, unfortunately, I'm in control here. Yeah, but I think
I've had enough of being in control.
I think that people are not really asking questions. They are claiming what they have heard here. I don't really see. I mean, they are discussing about whiteness and academia.
Yeah.
Exchanged references to the Black Lives Matter and the Black planners, etc. But do you have any comments, Mimi and Cristina, to what you have heard from each other? Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to comment in thinking about what I said, that I would add to it. I mean, after listening to everybody, that one could take also the field of critical disability studies and make, a similar set of comments, that if there was more inclusion of people with disabilities in transport planning and design thinking, and that it was actually built around a whole variety of different needs, that would have gender implications as well as other kinds of diversity, and would shift the paradigm also.
Yeah.
Well, what I would like to add is that we have to, even the researchers have to shift a little bit of their mindset regarding mobility. Mobility is not an activity per se. Mobility is an enabler for other activities. And I think that is exactly how mobility should be looked at. I do not care too much, oops, sorry. I do not care too much about the pattern of, well, yes, I do care, but I don't think that is the only important thing, is to understand the patterns and the means and so on. But the reason why people want to move, and how much discriminating is, for example, accessibility to education, to work, to health, to family care, and so on. So all these are really, and I missed a little bit of this back information in all the presentations you had. It's wonderful, but for example, COVID enlarged enormously the gap between privileged people and excluded groups. Mimi was talking about the Men Lives Matters in the States. In Europe, and in Italy in particular, we have the problem of immigrants and homeless people and people without jobs or people with black jobs that were completely destroyed by the pandemic and the lockdown. So they had no access to anything, not only mobility, but also to productivity. So I think that we should look at mobility as an enabler, not only as an activity per se. So the accessibility is the key word, I think, that we have to bear in mind.
Could I just add in that in these draft program, draft versions of the new research program, which is, I mean, important because it's also enabling new research to come up. Disability has, more attention than has, and of course there are possibilities of, creative thinking and so on, but still I think that we should be pushing also for I mean, both gender and intersectional, thinking.
Intersectionality.
In the program, because I mean, Cristina, you know better than anybody else. I mean, all the money goes to the people who are perhaps promoting the wrong things here. So I think it's a provocation to see how little, I mean, biking, which is, we say we have a new moment here for biking and so on, and it's not in the program. I mean, yeah. And we also need new ideas about that. But away from that, I Michelle has this point of you have a moment, there's a, you have a moment now, there's a turn in things, or there are policy windows that are opening up. I think we should think about that also in the TInnGO project, because I think you are very right. And I can say that in Denmark, we have had 2 or 3 high-level politicians stepping back here over the past 2 weeks because of sexism in their parties. And I mean, this is incredible. I mean, we haven't had a Me Too wave in Denmark, but I mean, everybody is now on their toes and trembling for new interventions by women. And I think that one could also look into sexism in public transit, because that's also a big issue. But of course, it's also a broader moment of new thinking. Thanks for that. Yeah. Anybody else? Andrea, do you want to add in?
No, I'm done for today.
Yeah. But in a way, I also think that the moment has come to close the multi-stakeholder events, because it doesn't seem as if there are more questions, pressing questions here, but we can, of course, encourage everybody to contact speakers or to contact each others for more information. And we would also encourage you to watch out for the reports from the TInnGO project, many of which will become public here in the coming months. And I would also say that this multi-stakeholder forum has been a big encouragement for us as stakeholders, as partners in the TInnGO project, because we have also, in a way, been hit by the COVID process, both in terms of, delaying our project itself, but also because I think a big thing in a project like this is to have face-to-face meetings and interactions, and we haven't had that for nearly a year now. So I really, really hope that things will improve here.
Can I make one little comment?
Project. Yeah, Mimi.
I'm not sure. Maybe you didn't see in the Q&A box. There's one question from Heather.
Sorry.
It's not in the chat. It's in the Q&A. And she
sorry. I agree.
About repositioning engineering.
But now to make the compelling arguments, we have a good international framework and interest level, but I still can't get the traction needed by those that fund projects as well as ministries and the economists that advise them. How can we accelerate this change post-COVID?
And I had one reply to that, which is I think that we have a tendency to look either to the state and sort of government policy, and then on the other side, there's economics, right? There's business, and those are the ones that are shaping our built environment. And I think we need to carve out more space for what I call commoning mobilities. And there's other groups like Anna Nikolaeva who are using this term and thinking about like the role, not the state, not the economy, neither public nor private, but in between, we need a voice, which you might call civil society or communities or however you want to name it, but I call it the mobile commons, and that has to be expressed as a more inclusive place where we think this through, including different models for engineering and planning and investing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that's been happening a lot with some of the tactical urbanism, or cities have been more willing to explore things and do it really quickly. So if they can do it in COVID and close down city centres and open up pavements, why can't they do it normally? And so working with them, it's a model that works, and some exciting things were happening during COVID, but very quickly things are going back to normal. There's traffic jams and you don't hear the birds and things, and everyone's pushing and trying to get there as fast as possible again. So we're losing our memory of it very quickly. And yeah, capitalizing on that movement would be really good.
Yes, hopefully not, because the COVID crisis now we are closing, Europe is closing down again. So I think we need to be reminded about everything again and again.
Yeah, okay.
No, sorry, Andrea, do you have any closing remarks?
No, I think that is it. I'd like to thank everybody for staying with us for so long. We did take a very big risk in having this that went over for about 5 hours when we originally planned for half a day. So thank everybody, thank the presenters, and please let's all keep in touch. So I'd like to thank everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we'll just close down now, right?
I think that's it. I think we've closed down. Yes.
Thanks.